Welcome to the newest episode of Beatin' and Bangin'. I'm your host, Kyle Dalton. First off, I have to apologize for any background noise you might hear because we're having new flooring put in our house after almost 22 years of living here. Hope it's not too distracting. In today's video, we're going to recap the weekend from Atlanta, including the latest dramatic developments in the charter negotiations where teams were reportedly threatened to sign or lose their charters. And we'll discuss the two teams that opted not to sign it and what it means for those teams and the sport. Also, after last week's Xfinity Series race at Darlington, where I talked about the bad luck of Sheldon Creed, I have more unfortunate radio conversations from the driver of the number 18 car and his pit crew, and it's not pretty. And finally, we'll talk about our first race of the 2024 Cup Series playoffs and everything that happened before Joey Logano crossed the finish line first to lock himself into the round of 12. Oh yeah, and stick around because I have the winner of this Kevin Harvick helmet from the contest in last week's Darlington recap video. However, before we get to that, I want to talk about today's sponsor, Canvasback. Many of you probably remember Canvasback because it was one of our featured items in the Father's Day gift guide back in June. I have to say this product was undoubtedly one of the top 3 most talked about items, and you guys loved it. So I'm really happy to announce that they have come on board as a sponsor. For those of you who didn't see the guide, what is Canvasback, you ask? We all love to throw things into the back of our vehicles. We're active, on the move, and using our vehicles to transport and carry all kinds of things. Active lifestyles can be messy. Messy kids, dirty dog, muddy bikes, and golf clubs. Wet flower pots, you get the picture. Your vehicle is worth protecting and keeping it looking great with these tailor-fit cargo liners that are made from waterproof, water-resistant polyester fabrics, not rubber or plastic. They are really sleek and maintain the intended functionality of your vehicle while providing that necessary area of coverage. Seriously, if you are someone who does things or likes to carry things that can dirty up your vehicle, which is pretty much everyone, Canvasback is the ideal solution. And for Beating and Banging fans, you receive $15 off of your cargo liner by going to the link in the description and entering the promo code BB15. Thanks again to Canvasback for sponsoring this video, and please go check out their fantastic product. Both you and your vehicle will be very happy. Now, let's move on to our first story, and normally this is where I talk about the various things said in media availabilities. However, this week we're going to do things a little differently and focus on a single topic, the charter negotiations, and more specifically, what the different players involved had to say about it. According to various reports, last week NASCAR sent teams the latest proposal and set Friday as the deadline for wrapping up negotiations before the Cup Series playoffs. But it wasn't just any proposal, it came with conditions. Teams were told if they didn't sign the agreement, they risked losing their existing charters, which are valued between $30 and $50 million. Team owners and executives met early last week and reviewed the proposal. Multiple teams indicated they were ready to sign the deal. However, there were 2 that weren't, and we learned over the weekend that those were 23XI Racing and Front Row Motorsports. Here's what 23XI Racing said about its position in a statement. 23XI decided to not meet a NASCAR-imposed deadline last night to sign charter agreements for its 2 cars for 2025 through 2031. 23XI's position, as stated in a letter to NASCAR, is that we did not have an opportunity to fairly bargain for a new charter contract. We notified NASCAR what issues needed to be addressed in writing at the deadline. We are interested in engaging in constructive discussions with NASCAR to address these issues and move forward in a way that comes to a fair resolution while strengthening the sport we all love. At 23XI Racing, we remain committed to competing at the highest level while also standing firm in our belief that NASCAR should be governed by fair and equitable practices. Interestingly, there was a plot twist on Sunday when Front Row owner Bob Jenkins spoke with Jerry Jordan of Kickin' the Tires about NASCAR's latest offer and seemed to expand on the 23XI Racing comments of, "We did not have an opportunity to fairly bargain for a new contract." You know, I don't think you can give somebody a 105-page document at 6 o'clock on a Friday night and expect them to sign it by midnight, Jenkins said. I think it's very unreasonable, and there have been some things that have happened through the negotiation process that, quite frankly, we just don't agree with. And we're obligated to negotiate in good faith, and we feel like we did. And I don't know that everything on the other side happened that way. RFK Racing driver and co-owner Brad Keselowski visited with reporters on Saturday during media availabilities and offered his perspective on the situation.
Do you feel like you were forced to sign it? You know, it sounds like they gave you, said, hey, we're going to sign it or lose your charter.
Well, I don't necessarily know where that's coming from, but forced is a really strong term. But, you know, we are getting to a spot where, you know, it's important to get these things settled. You know, we're glad that the economics are, you know, improved to go with where, you know, the media landscape has moved. And we're certainly glad to see the sport perpetuate. And, you know, right now the sport lives and dies off of the media rights deal, and there's no getting around that. And so when the media rights deal gets done or got done this winter, that was a big deal for the sport. And then now that you're seeing the dominoes fall behind that, and so, but don't forget what the first domino is.
I mean, you've been in the sport a long time. You've seen there's never really a time where the owners are totally happy with NASCAR. So I'm curious, like, is this just another one of those times, or is it a little bit more, do you sense a little more frustration with owners?
You know, there's a lot of comparisons between NASCAR and the other sports leagues. And, you know, I think this industry is looking over its shoulder at, you know, NFL and NBA and so forth, and seeing their situation continue to dramatically improve, and we all want the same. And so, you know, that creates an expectation or a standard that, you know, I think drives some of those negotiations.
Keselowski didn't want to say NASCAR forced them to sign the deal, but you can certainly sense he wasn't totally pleased with it, even mentioning how other leagues have seen things dramatically improve and NASCAR teams have similar expectations. Keselowski mentioned the NFL and NBA specifically, and that brings us back to 23XI Racing's Bubba Wallace, who races for co-owner Michael Jordan. Wallace interestingly revealed how his organization's position on the charter negotiations affects him personally.
I know my process has been kind of going hand in hand with the charter agreement, so it's frustrating to see where we're at because that impacts my life and livelihood and everything moving forward for my future. So that's really all I got to say about it.
While most teams sign the deal, this thing isn't over, not by a long shot. And it makes me just wonder where it's going. I can assure you I will be keeping close tabs on it in the coming days ahead. Now, let's move on to Saturday's Xfinity Series race, which Austin Hill won, but I want to talk specifically about Sheldon Creed. Last week I talked about how the number 18 pilot was in line to earn his first Xfinity win at Darlington, but then a late caution derailed those hopes. This week at Atlanta was another frustrating chapter for Creed and his time at JGR. Highlighted, or I guess in this case, lowlighted by troubles on pit road. I said troubles because there were several issues, starting with this.
Issue on pit road just moments ago, Steve.
Yeah, two-tire change, and then I'm not sure what happens, whether it's a miscommunication, but a tire's left in front of the car. Creed leaves and rolls the tire away.
Tire out of the way. What the hell is that?
That's what, 3 in a row we've thrown away now on pit road.
That was the first one. Here's the second and the response from his team.
We got to do a pass-through, crew member over the wall too soon, so we're going to have to come back down.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
I got nothing for you, bud. We just fucked it up. Decided we're just going to fucking finish this race and go to Watkins Glen. That's all I can say.
You can't help but feel for Creed. Just really unfortunate. And now let's move on to the Cup Series, and we'll start with qualifying. And if it's at a super speedway, you know Michael McDowell is going to be up front. And he was. How about this for a stat? McDowell had never earned a pole in his entire career before this year. In 2024, he's earned 5, and Atlanta was his 4th consecutive superspeedway pole. He also won the pole at Gateway. Unsurprisingly, it was a Ford-heavy top 5 with Blaney on the outside of row 1, followed by Todd Gilliland, Josh Berry, and Austin Cindric. Kyle Larson was the first non-blue oval at 6th. Speaking of Larson, let's jump right into the race, which saw McDowell lead the first 30 laps before Ryan Blaney made the pass for the lead. And then on lap 57, Larson, who was running third, lost control of his car, and it shot up the track for a nasty hit into the outside wall. Chase Briscoe, just a week after earning his spot in the playoffs, was also collected in the crash and ended his day early. A few minutes after the incident, NBC put up a graphic that was pretty interesting as it showed since Atlanta was reconfigured before the 2022 season, The HMS driver has an average finish of 30th. Yeah, 30th. And he's been involved in an accident in all 6 races with 5 DNFs. His best finish was 13th in the July 22 race. After he was released from the Infield Care Center, Larson visited with NBC's Dave Burns and offered a blunt response to the reporter's bizarre point.
Yeah, you came in with the most playoff points. This is affecting it now.
Obviously.
That caution took us to the end of the first stage, which Blaney won. He was followed by Austin Cindric, Alex Bowman, Joey Logano, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. During the break, Martin Truex Jr. had what would turn out to be the first of many issues for drivers on pit road.
Got popped for speeding. Section 6.
Seriously? How?
Don't have a clue.
Where's 6 at?
That would be the 4th section on the straight line. It's about the first 5 boxes.
I didn't even think I was close to what I did on my practice run. I was behind someone. The only thing about it is that's where it's real bumpy, I think. It's hard to tell where you're at, so maybe that was the spot.
On the restart for stage 2, Cindric jumped out to the early lead ahead of Alex Bowman. What I found really interesting early in that stage was a question Kyle Busch had for his team.
How many laps in is this? Working lap 35 of this run-ish, and when the 5 had his issue.
Busch was obviously concerned about the same thing happening to him that had happened to Kyle Larson earlier. Another interesting thing of note during this stage, and it was a continuation from stage 1, and that was Denny Hamlin hanging in the back and not moving forward. We would later learn it was by choice. More on that in a bit. Also during that second stage, Hamlin's teammate Christopher Bell became the second JGR driver to struggle on pit road. Take a listen.
4, 3, 2, 1. Back up. We can't change tires. We got to back up. We got a penalty. You want to top off again? One to go. Sure. Pitting outside the box. We'll do the same. We'll top off. One to go.
Copy that. I didn't feel like I missed my mark on the sign, so next time, if we can back the sign up a little bit, please.
10-4.
While the Toyotas were having issues, the Fords and Chevys continued to run up front. Austin Cindric swapped spots with Blaney from the first stage results to win the stage, and they were followed by Bowman, Suarez, and William Byron. In that final stage, after John Hunter Nemechek brought out an early caution for a single car spin, Bubba Wallace and Ty Gibbs restarted on the front row, and I couldn't help but think about the 21-year-old's heated comments last week about Wallace at Darlington. The pair battled up front for 30 laps before the next caution when Chris Buescher got loose and shot up the track into the left rear of the number 12, which got sideways before hitting the wall and ricocheting down into the path of Truex, who slammed into the driver's side door of the defending champ. Moments after it happened, Blaney was not happy.
I got clobbered in the left rear wheel. Right rear corner hit the wall. So, I don't fucking know. No information. I don't... What the fuck are we doing? Am I good? Not? Jesus Christ, man.
It's pretty tough, man. Not gonna lie. You know, you're trying to do the best you can without giving up track position. So I apologize for the lack of information, but it's not exactly straightforward. So I'll tell you, but next time, just to be efficient.
I just need to know. Like, I'm getting blown by. There's no way these guys are saving as much as me. I mean, I'm trying to do the best I can to keep track position, but I don't know. How bad's the damage?
On the subsequent restart, Kyle Busch, who stayed out with a small group of cars, started up front and received some guidance from crew chief Randall Burnett.
So with where we're at, obviously leading now, we need to hope that we can control the pace of this. We're going to have to back it down a little bit and try to run, you know, like what those other guys were doing when they were leading a little bit ago.
How many short are we right here if it's just wide open to the end?
We're like within 1 or 2 here if we use our mileage based off of what everybody has been when they're leading.
While Busch tried to slow down the pace and save fuel, Ty Gibbs had other ideas. He moved up to the outside lane and began trying to move forward and push the pace. With 27 laps remaining, Gibbs moved to the point, and soon after that happened, Busch began asking his team over the radio if it was time to push and go full throttle. Over the course of the next 15 laps, Gibbs stayed up front and appeared to have a good chance of at least a good finish, if not his first Cup win, and then a caution. But not just your average ordinary caution for a crash, but a yellow for debris. Oh yeah, and not just your average ordinary debris, but a freaking Walmart sign. Seriously, you can't make this stuff up. You have to wonder who approves these decisions, because right after it happened, officials were seen removing yet another sign hanging over the track. That caution raised a single question for the teams: who was good on fuel? There was a small group of cars, including Gibbs, Blaney, and Christopher Bell, that were certain they were good. Most of the others running up front weren't so sure. That question became even more significant after a restart and Noah Gragson crashed with 2 laps to go. The final green-white checkered restart was an interesting one with teammates working together. Logano and Blaney working on the inside of rows 1 and 2, and Suarez and Ross Chastain working on the outside. Team Penske proved to be the better team, as the number 12 pushed the number 22 out to the lead and ultimately the victory, as a caution came out just before the cars crossed the finish line, with a crash happening in the back. The checkered flag for Logano made for a Penske sweep on the day, with Blaney and Cindric winning the first 2 stages, and the 2-time champ winning the race. Of note, Suarez finished second and Blaney finished third. That was 2 of the 3 finishers from the thrilling, history-making finish in the spring. The third car from that finish, Kyle Busch, was the only non-playoff driver inside the top 10, and he finished 7th. Gibbs, who thought he might have a chance for his first win, got shuffled back in the field on the final restart and finished 17th. Outside of the winner, the one big storyline everyone was talking about after the race was the result of Denny Hamlin, who was involved in that last lap crash, and his overall performance on the day. Here's what he said about it in his post-race interview.
I just tried to avoid the wrecks, and obviously I was trying to get 20 points out of the day. That was my goal, is just get 20 however we could. Obviously starting in the back, it didn't help.
At the conclusion of Hamlin's interview, Kyle Petty, who's had some history with Hamlin, was asked about the driver's remarks, and in typical Kyle Petty fashion, he didn't hold back.
Who goes into the playoffs saying, I want to get 20 points in the first race? I've never heard anything like that in all the history of when we've had playoffs. I just want to get 20 points. I'm going to ride back here. So I'm more confused now than I was before I heard him speak.
I have to agree with Petty on this one. Hamlin's strategy was questionable at best, but I'm sure he'll explain it on his podcast this week. All right, guys, that's a wrap on this episode. I want to get your thoughts. First, let's start with the charter negotiations. What do you think about NASCAR's tactics and Front Row's Bob Jenkins saying NASCAR gave the teams just 6 hours to read the document and sign the deal? And as far as the Cup race, what do you make of Kyle Larson's horrible performance at Atlanta since the reconfiguration? And what about Logano? I don't know about you, but for me, this is starting to feel similar to what happened a couple of years ago when he won the title. And finally, what did you think of Hamlin's performance and his comments after the race? Again, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Canvasback. If you're active and on the go and find your vehicle getting dirty on the regular, these guys have the perfect solution for you. And for Beating and Banging fans, you receive $15 off of your cargo liner by going to the link in the description and entering the promo code BB15. And finally, our last order of business is announcing the winner of this Kevin Harvick helmet. Drum roll, please. Of the 152 entrants of the contest, there's only one winner, and it is at William Harrell 8349. William, please comment on this video and we'll get that helmet sent out to you. Thanks again to everyone for participating, and as always, thanks for supporting the channel. I really do appreciate it and hope you have a great rest of your day.